Hello, hello, hello. Good evening. This is WeatherBrains episode number 600.
Oh no,
600. Wow.
Does that mean we self-destruct?
Proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that none of us have a lick of sense,
and we have no life,
and we have no life
whatsoever.
That's completely the truth.
Yeah, so no, it's 600. This is a big deal. I mean, we should be excited. We should celebrate episode number 600.
Mm-hmm. We should get a raise.
We'll double everybody's salary on this show.
Twice nothing is still nothing.
Yep, absolutely.
Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. In the words of Billy Preston.
Nothing from nothing leaves nothing.
Leaves nothing. What a great song.
James, I have found out what can take out your 1 gigabit service.
What?
Chipmunks.
Oh, you got that thing running now?
Yep. It was the line between my house and the box, which is between my house and my neighbor's house.
Oh, I didn't know you were getting it too. I thought it was just changed.
No. I don't have what he has. I have the 75 megabit down and 8 up or something like that. Oh. But
are you actually getting
that? Yeah, pretty close.
What are you getting, James?
850 or something like that.
Yeah, in the real world, you get anywhere from 800 to 850 on most
symmetrical
tests. Yes,
yeah,
up and down.
Wow.
In other words, if he wants a website, it pops before he knows he even wants it.
If there's not a bunch of junk, JavaScript and all this, the main when you see it is when you're uploading files.
I bet.
You just press a button and it's there. I mean, even a big video file, and you're thinking, what's wrong with this? I mean, it's not doing anything. Well, it did it so fast, you didn't even know that it uploaded. So, also, you can do some really nice, like I did a thing for Dr. John, and it is IWT in Pennsylvania, and it's just like, 1080p broadcast quality live shot stuff. I mean, it really looks nice on the, up side too. So
there's your show title in the chat, by the way, from Rick. I have a wild hyper puppy in the next room.
No, that's the show. To Wild hyper puppy in the next room.
Yeah.
Yep.
Patrick, can you hear us? Okay.
During the show.
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Fine. Loud and clear. We're not going to lead you down a bad path. Patrick thinks we're going to get him in trouble on this. No, we're not going to do that.
I saw that.
I don't think you're going to get me in trouble. I think I'm willingly going to end up in trouble.
I think he's right.
There's a call now for Patrick and I to do a spin-off podcast.
I think you should.
I wonder what we call that.
I'll change my name.
Yep. Oh, Rick, you want to have lunch? Did you see my note, Rick?
I did, and I haven't responded, and absolutely. Yeah. I don't know about this week, but yeah.
Tell me when.
As long as you're paying, Kevin.
I'll pay.
Oh, there's no question about that. I wouldn't even entertain the offer. No, I'm just kidding.
So we can start once we hit the TV. We got 2 minutes.
Pick a day and tell me. I can probably Thursday's not as good, but
all right, I'll take a look and let you know.
Because I'm hoping this will move faster as opposed to slower. Of course, then it hits the weather service, and then that does that in, doesn't it? No.
Yeah. Keep dreaming.
James, what's your weekend gal's name?
Miegon. I call her Miegon.
Oh, Megan? Is that it?
Megan.
Yeah, but it's like I should have checked off on that spelling. Nobody can spell her name right. It's one of these. And I got to work on her Twitter ID. Her Twitter ID is Miegon _Wex !_ something. I mean,
did you slap her down for that driving tweet that she put out a week or two ago? That was terrible.
Which one was this?
Chasing, that hazardous driving, chasing.
She was hazardous driving?
Yeah. Did you not see that? I sent it to you.
I didn't see that one either.
No.
I'll have to go back and find it.
Send it to me.
I would say just looking.
I did. I sent it to everybody.
Oh.
What, Patrick?
I was just looking at some of the stuff that I see from students, and it's amazing what some of these people do and don't even realize what they did.
Yeah. Ooh, by the way, let me welcome our television audience. I just noticed we are now on TV. It's 30 minutes after the hour. This is WeatherBrains. We got a big show tonight, number 600. Yeah, somebody just tweeted, I think a spinoff podcast would be great. Call it The Accelerants. Patrick Marsh.
We could have one of those happy-go-lucky TV intros like The Odd Couple or something that people always make jokes
about. So Patrick, how many times have you been on WeatherBrains?
I've been on once as a guest, once to talk about the NWA annual meeting in Oklahoma City, and then this one. So 2.5.
How come Bill said you're a 5-time guest? I haven't figured that one out.
Maybe it's just it was so memorable it seemed that long.
It just feels that long.
Just feels that way.
Patrick feels like he's here every week.
Yeah. I'll say the first time I was on was tornado emergencies, so that probably counts as 3 right there.
Well, I can't find your name except in one.
How is it that it's 1,000 degrees and the dew point is 87 and you're wearing a hoodie? You're in Norman, right?
I am in Norman. I'm inside the house, and I like hoodies. So I'm a little warm, admittedly, but I like hoodies. And true story. I was at a conference and I was speaking. I was one of the keynotes, and the night before I spoke, we went out to dinner, and I have made it a habit when I do this. I go out. I try to wear a hoodie or something incredibly casual so that students aren't afraid to approach me. I ended up talking with this guy for most of the night. And the next day after my talk, he comes up to me and said, I had no idea you were the keynote speaker. I would never have come up and just talked to you that way. So I try to dress down to blend in, so to speak, so people won't feel like they can't talk to me.
All right, let's get this thing started, gentlemen.
You could probably get a little closer to that mic, Patrick. It's a little...
Right.
Oh, you're using those things?
Yeah, trying to anyway.
Oh, must be the hoodie throwing it off.
Yeah, it's soaking the sound up. Here we go. We're recording in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains episode number 600. 600. We should be celebrating 600 episodes of this show. This is for the 17th of July, 2017. Kevin Selly, we figured out some things about this. Number one, we clearly don't have a life.
No, and no sense either.
And we have no sense. So that's the one thing I think that this speaks is episode number 600. I want to say we're about 11 or 12 years old.
That is crazy.
I mean, we were like young pups when we started doing this. And here we are, still doing it. So, Kevin, you are the accelerant. Anything you want to share with the group here? Any crankiness? Any good... negative things you want to say about somebody or something?
I'll probably use my own blog as a pick of the week. I kind of went off on our own station app. Our station got a new app from we've had a weather app for a while, but they switched over to a new vendor, and I just couldn't stand it anymore. I kind of went off, and Nate sent me a note later. He said, I shared your blog post with our digital general manager, and I can't remember the exact quote, but the guy said, well, I commend him for his brave post.
Do you still have a job?
That's apparently so. I don't know how. My favorite line of it was there was I took a screenshot of this new app, and I wrote this, there is literally when you open the app, there is literally no usable weather information on the page that you are seeing when you open the app.
Boy, that makes me want to go download this thing right now.
It's stunning. I mean,
so how do you promote this on the air? I mean, they want you to promote it on the air. Hey, get our Channel 3 app because it'll follow you wherever you go, and you'll always be in touch with the Channel 3 app.
Right. I have not mentioned it, and I can't remember how long. It wasn't great before, but now it is next to useless.
Wow. Next to useless. That is a candidate for the show title for the week, but I think we have a better one.
Yes.
Better one. Wild hyper puppy in the next room. Rick Smith, would you please explain what that means?
I have no idea what you're talking about. No, a little boxer puppy that was about that big. I brought it on the show one time, and she's now huge. And my son's watching her in the next room. So if I get an emergency text message that says she's running amok, or I hear screaming or barking, we may have to bail out early. But no, everything's good. She's just growing like a weed and getting big so fast that before long, it's going to take more than one of us to take care of her, I think.
What's her name again?
Lucy.
Lucy, yeah. You posted some epic, was it a tweet? That epic where she lunged at you, that video?
Yeah, I was out playing in the backyard with her taking pictures, and she lunged, and yeah, I caught it at just the right.
It was perfect.
Latched onto my nose. So it is kind of amusing, though. I do have some sound files on my phone of when my wife's chasing her around the house, or I'm chasing her around the house. It sounds like an episode of I Love Lucy a lot. Lucy,
That's funny. You say, are you going to split? You have to explain this?
Yeah, a lot of splaining to do.
Need Fred and Ethel Mertz. So for those that don't know, Rick is the warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma. Also joining us is the internationally beloved meteorologist, Brian Peters, who is going to be on an international television show. What, next week or in 2 weeks? When are you doing that?
Next Tuesday.
Wow, what?
Well, I'm not going to be on the show. I'm going to be videotaped. But more important than that, I hope by then I'll be able to get...
How is that not being on the show?
Well, because I'm not on yet. They haven't produced it yet.
He's saying they're recording his
They're recording it.
week. He doesn't know when it's going to run.
You'll still be on the show.
Well, unless I screw up real bad,
Oh, I see.
But
you could be left on the cutting room floor. Is what
absolutely. But that is only if the rain quits. I've had 5.05 inches in the last 3 days.
Wow.
Including 1.21 today, 2.08 yesterday, and 1.76 Saturday. So I may be scuba diving to the station next week.
Is that what clogged up your tubes last week? Last week, Brian said he had no internet access. This guy can steal Wi-Fi at the South Pole.
That was the Chipmunks.
Show title. Clogged up your tubes.
Yeah, that was the Chipmunks. We have chipmunks. We have this neighborhood cat, and I keep encouraging the cat to eat chipmunks. Boy, that ought to get the ASPCA
This is
on
the
us.
most show titles ever.
Boy,
is it?
This
Really?
whole segment's been just a nonstop plethora of show titles.
Encouraging.
Well, I've already got one from Patrick. It's hiding behind a hoodie.
Yeah. We'll bring in Patrick here in just a second, but let's see. Rick, let me go back to Rick real quickly. I just learned something. I just see in the chat room you're only one of the WCMs. How many WCMs do you have there?
You have 100% of the WCMs and for the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma on the show tonight. So,
Yep.
Oh, okay. I got. We have all two of them here. Fantastic.
2 out of 2.
So,
And one retired one.
It seems as though one of them should be in a secret, undisclosed location, though. I mean, because what happens if somebody, does something?
It's the weather center, yeah.
Exactly.
We are separated by sufficient distance.
Okay.
Not if somebody takes the building out.
That's
we
part
have
of
it
the plan.
I'm about 40 miles east, so.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. But Brian, before we bring in Patrick, Brian, so tell us about this international show you're going to be on, and what are you going to be talking about? I want the world to know.
okay. It's either the Science Channel or the Discovery Channel because they have a logo that has both names on it. So I guess they do productions for both. They're on the other side of the pond. I got an international call today, and I wasn't sure if it was some spammers or somebody trying to scam me. So I didn't even answer. The guy left me a very nice message. I was very pleased after I didn't answer his call. But they're doing a 52-week show in which they're going to talk about something scientific, and they've decided to do the 2011 Kelvin Helmholtz waves that occurred in Birmingham.
This is great. Brian can't even say the name of these clouds, and he's going to be the expert. Wow.
Yeah, right. So, and I didn't even see them. I just saw pictures of them because they were downtown. But anyway, so that's what it's all about. It's nothing big.
Okay.
It'll be
But
fun.
you are the internationally beloved meteorologist. Well,
Yeah,
well, Bill Murray
cool.
is not here tonight. Where is Bill tonight? What's he doing?
He's in Albuquerque at a family reunion.
Family reunion. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Wow. Since Bill is not here, all of us will be the people that are going to grill our guest, who is none other than Dr. Patrick Marsh. And yes, he is a WCM in Norman, Oklahoma. But instead of working for the National Weather Service forecast office there, he's with the Storm Prediction Center. Dr. Marsh, thank you for having the nerve to come on this show. You're a very kind man.
My pleasure, and I'm ready for whatever you throw at me.
No, you're not.
Let's all throw things at
it never happens that way.
No, I'm a fanboy. I'm a fanboy. Petra, I'm a big fanboy of what the guys do at SPC. I'm their #1 fan. So the crankiness will come from either Kevin or Brian, Patrick. So you have no trouble with me. But
my first question, Patrick, is how do you spell lightning?
It depends on the context. One of my favorite tweets that I send out a couple times a year is I get up and I take a picture of sunrise and say, "I found lightning."
Oh.
Patrick, did you go to the IWT meeting the other day?
I did not. I was actually I was working shift. We had some health issues come up with some forecasters, so I worked the shift and Bill went to represent SPC.
He had some great stuff, I thought. Do you know, I guess I could go and look, but there's some cool stuff coming.
There's a lot of cool stuff that we're working on. We were hoping to get some of it out this spring, but with vacancies and people being on leave and things like that, we just, weather comes first. And so it'll just have to wait, and we'll just keep whetting your appetites.
I was most interested. He kind of asked somewhat casually, he asked the room if more frequent, I think he first said, would more frequent meso discussions be of interest? And of course everybody went, yeah. Can you talk about that?
So one of the things that we did, there was no concerted effort, so to speak. It just kind of, it was a natural outgrowth of what we do. But back in some of the severe weather events we had in January and February, and I think maybe even into March, we started using Mesoscale Discussions to talk about thunderstorm clusters, to give some more specific information about the environment ahead of some of these thunderstorm clusters. I think that we did some things regarding, I believe we said something about before one of the killer tornadoes, the nocturnal killer tornadoes, about the tornado threat is increasing along this area. There will be a heightened risk for strong tornadoes. So it's just forecasters we're trying to encourage forecasters that if you know something and you think that people need to know it, go ahead and write it, and we'll sort the rest of it out later. So there's no formal process. It's just if forecasters think they have insights that the weather community would benefit from hearing, we try to pass it along.
So how are those distributed then?
Just the normal Mesoscale discussions that they just go out. It's just sometimes you'll see Mesoscale discussions the size of maybe 1 or 2 counties talking about a specific storm, rather than the traditional you see that are for the entire like parts of states.
Okay. And would you guys, do you think, because one of the things we talked about at IWT was moving toward what I think is closer to reality now for the rest of the world with social media and sort of what's referred to as the river of news, or in this case, it would be river of weather. Would you do even more, or is the current mandate, hey, if you see something, you think something, just do it, and is that enough?
It's a balancing act between our staffing levels, and you don't want to get so focused on a small storm and trying to share insight on a small storm that you lose sight of the big picture, and we forget to do what the public and the weather enterprise has come to expect from us.
Right.
So it's kind of a balancing act. If it's a really big day and it's really busy, we'll probably not be able to write on every thunderstorm cluster. But if it's a relatively confined event, or we brought extra people in because we expected a media type, a potential big media type response, then you might see it. So it's a balancing act between our staffing issues and being able to maintain situational awareness across the entire country.
Hey, Patrick, have you gotten any response from the from WFOs on that? Either way, I can see different types of feedback you might be getting for that.
I personally have not. That is not to say that SPC has not. A lot of the feedback would probably go to Bill Bunting. A lot of coming from the field, from the MIC in Fort Worth, and being the operations branch chief, a lot of the WFO communication tends to go through him, at least in terms of operational products. Now, in terms of data and stats, like when was the last time Colorado was in a particularly dangerous situation watch, things like that would tend to go to me, but feedback about operational products tends to go straight to Bill.
Gotcha.
And what about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kevin, you finish.
It came into my head and went out. Oh, what about a more frequent Outlook updates? There was some discussion of that at some point.
So that's a thing that we've wrestled with. We want to do it. We did an experiment the last couple years. 2 years ago, I think we did one internal to just the Storm Prediction Center. Last year, we did an experiment in this late spring and early summer on short-term tornado outlooks that was available to internal to the Weather Service. But the trade-off that we wrestle with is how do you communicate that in the context of the broader 24-hour picture? Because you can imagine that in a short-term scenario, you could have really high tornado probabilities because tornadoes are ongoing. But then how do you communicate? Well, the short-term outlook says something like there's an 80% chance of a tornado. I'm just throwing out numbers here. There's an 80% chance of a tornado in the next 2 hours, whereas the parent 24-hour still says that there's only a 15% tornado threat. So it's this tug between what is it a probability of, how do you define the probabilities, and it plays into the facets paradigm, the forecasting of continuum of environmental threats across scales, such as you become more and more focused. What is it a probability of? Is it a probability of an event for an individual storm? Is it the probability of an event occurring at a specific location? So that could mean the probabilities from multiple storms and multiple hazards are accumulated. So it's the weather community is still wrestling with this. How do we define our probabilities so that they are less confusing than if we just throw out a bunch of numbers? So that's one of the reasons why we're slow to roll this out. There's also the notion of, if you're doing short-term outlooks every 2 hours, do you run into a situation where people fail to take action based on the current forecast because they're going to wait 2 more hours to see, did SPC really mean it? Or are they going to change? Or what does the latest data say? So there's a lot of communication and social science work that needs to be done before we will be comfortable disseminating it publicly. Now, we are trying to move that way. We are trying to solve some of these problems. It's a slow process because we want to get it right.
You said a minute ago at the beginning of that answer that you tested things. I would love you to flesh that out a little more. What does a test inside of SPC look like?
Well, it was more of a staffing test to see if we could do it. So after the initial issuance of the 1630 convective outlook, we would do a forecast that was due by 17Z for the probability of a tornado during the time period of, I believe it was 17 to 19 and then 19 to 21. Don't quote me exactly on those, but it was basically, it was either two hour periods or 2 4-hour periods. And we were really assessing the workload effect. Can we do that in our current staffing environment and maintain situational awareness for everything else? We haven't really evolved into completely evaluating the skill part. Is there skill in what we're doing? We believe that there will be, but we're working toward that way. And unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, we were unable to actually continue the next part of the testing process this year, given our staffing situations, people on emergency sick leave, emergency long-term sick leave, and just our normal trying to keep things up during the summer while people are wanting to spend time with family. So we weren't able to do it this year, but there are plans to resume it. Maybe do something in the fall, or definitely probably go more towards the hopefully next spring as our staffing numbers come back up.
Speaking of staffing, let's kind of talk about that. First off, your position. I think most folks that listen to this show kind of understand what a WCM does at a local office, but what is your role as the WCM at the SPC?
The tongue-in-cheek answer is I'm still trying to figure it out. The serious answer is it's a lot of the same thing, but on different scales. So I'll take a step back and discuss the structure of the Storm Prediction Center. So as compared to a field office. A field office has the MIC who's kind of in charge, and then you have part of the management team. You have the science and operations officer, the SU, and the warning coordination meteorologist, the WCM. And beneath that, you have your lead forecasters, your journey forecasters, and your meteorological interns, and maybe some additional support staff for our met techs and people like that. The Storm Prediction Center, we have at the top we have the director, which for us is Russ Schneider, Dr. Schneider. Below that we have the branch chief. We have two branches. We have a science support branch and a forecast operations branch. Bill Bunting is the head of the forecast operations branch, and Mr. Steve Weiss is the head of the science support branch. So if you were to try to map the exact same structure as a field to the Storm Prediction Center, that tier, the branch chiefs are members, are the second tier in the hierarchy. Below that, we have the warning coordination meteorologist, and then the science operations officer. The science operations officer reports to the science support branch chief. The warning coordination meteorologist actually reports directly to the Storm Prediction Center director, and that's a throwback to prior to the modernization. The warning coordination meteorologist was actually the deputy director position, so it was housed within the office of the director hierarchy, and so that's why the WCM still reports to the director. And then below that, we have the lead forecasters, the meso and outlook forecasters, and then the mesoscale assistant / fire weather forecasters. So that's kind of, if you were to put it in a grade scale hierarchy, that's kind of the hierarchy. So I work a lot with other warning coordination meteorologists, and I work a lot with the operations branch chief. And in my case, the operations branch chief happens to be one of the founders of the warning coordination meteorologist program. And so I have the ability to ping Bill for a lot of stuff. I have Rick down the hall. I've come knocking on the door for Rick, talking about various things and asking for advice. So that's a good resource. But whereas the local WFOs really engage with the private sector, or excuse me, with the community at large, I tend to interact more with WFOs, and then I also I tend to interact more with the national media, and then also some of the private sector folks. One of the things that I want to do is I want to work with the AccuWeathers and the Weather Channels and all the others that Weather Nation TV and all the others that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, to make sure that the Storm Prediction Center products that we issue and our data formats keep up with the times, so that we can make sure that they can ingest our products and utilize them and help disseminate them. So that's one of my constituencies. You won't necessarily see me at a local IWT. Now, if invited, I would certainly be happy to attend, but I'm more likely to be interacting and talking to Mike Smith of AccuWeather Enterprise Solutions, who came down for a visit a couple of weeks ago, or Mike Bettis with the Weather Channel, or Jim Cantori. So it's a little bit different. I don't necessarily do all the same things. But in terms of functions and the general concept, I'm designed to help facilitate the flow of information within the larger warning process. The Storm Prediction Center doesn't actually issue warnings per se, which some people think, well, then why does it have a warning coordination meteorologist? Well, it's more of the entire integrated warning process that we're a part of, and that's the role that I try to facilitate, but on the national scale.
Yeah, I never liked our job titles. The warning coordination meteorologist for me, and especially for you, is very confusing. There's people think I issue every warning that comes out of the office. I can only imagine what they think you do. So
I've read a news article where somebody came down and did an interview, and we never really talked about warnings. But when you read the text of the interview, it mentions that that I help coordinate all of the warnings across the entire country. If that were the case, I would never
sleep.
Patrick's kind of a big deal.
I guess so.
So let's talk about the culture. So, Brian and I, we're the two old geezers on the show here. When Brian and I got in this, it was sales in Kansas City in the old Federal Building. Fred Osby was the director. And back in those days, it was kind of a private operation. You really didn't hear a lot about it. But now times have changed. I mean, you guys are rock stars. You are superstars. And, every graphic system in America has your products built in, and they're going to show on the air, on television, and across social media. And it is a very public operation. You've got social media now where the SPC obviously is on social media, and many of the folks like you are on social media. How has the culture changed over the years from the days of sales to where we are today with the SPC?
Well, we're certainly a lot more public, which is both good and bad. As you mentioned, historically, when we were sales and we started doing convective outlooks and watches, we were writing to other meteorologists. We were writing to the National Weather Service. And so as long as a group of meteorologists could come together and agree on what a term meant, and we used that term within that context, there was really no confusion. Hence, slight, moderate, and high for our convective outlook categories. But with the advent of the internet and more clamoring for information and people wanting to see more and more, and this continuous consumption of weather information, our products became more and more public, not necessarily through any dedicated or intentional choice. It just kind of evolved that way. We built a web page, and people found our web page and started trying to read our products, and we started getting a lot of questions about what does this acronym mean, or what does that acronym, or why do you call it a slight risk or a moderate risk, or those terms are horrible terms. And so we had to figure out how to evolve. And so one of the things that we've done is we've tried to incorporate public language or plain language summaries to our products. So you'll see a summary tag across our convective outlooks and our watches and our Mesoscale Discussions. And we try to then use that plain language summary to drive a lot of our messaging within our website and within other IDSS avenues, such that we can ensure consistency in message no matter where you gather the message from us. We introduced the 2 additional categories, the marginal and the enhanced risk, in late 2013. I know that there's a lot of discussion about the word choices, and I'll state up front, Storm Prediction Center is open to changing our terminology and our colors and how we assess this. But our one request is we want to make sure it's based in science. We want to make sure that if we make a change, that the change is going to stick, and that it's good for most, if not all, of the different groups that use our products. We don't want to make a change only to have to make a change 2 years from now or a year from now, because there were unintended consequences. And that actually is kind of what drove the addition of the 2 categories. Is the information contained in those categories has always been in our forecasts. They were just hidden in the probabilistic portion of the forecast. The tornado, wind, and hail were the probability parts for the days 2 and 3. We just decided to make it front and center. But the challenge that we had was we did not want to change the meaning of slight, moderate, and high, because so many of our partners in the emergency management community had built decision points based on those terminology. and we didn't want to lose all of that institutional knowledge in one fell swoop. So we've tried to find two categories to fit into the existing slight, moderate, and high namespace that minimized the confusion. Now, you can argue whether or not we were successful, but there was thought process into that. We also added categorical numbers to our outlooks. Marginal risk is a 1, slight is a 2, enhanced 3, moderate 4, high is 5. So there's also now numbers associated to the category names. And part of the reason why we did that is we know that the names were, there's the potential for confusion with the name of our categories. But if we can append the numbers to it and people start to also use the numbers, we can then at a later date come in and rechange the names and use the numbers as the decision point and then come up with better descriptors. And that's part of one of the things that we're open to and willing to work with social sciences on. So that's a culture change, is moving from this 3 tiers to a 5 tier, and knowing that we're going to get complaints about what our terminology is. And so some of the forecasters have stopped referring to slight, moderate in their product discussions. They actually go with the numbers, which I think is a good thing. And then social media, wow. Everything with social media and the immediate feedback and the praise and the criticism that's instantaneous. I still think we're trying to figure out how best to handle that and sift the wheat from the garbage.
Welcome to our world. No, one note on the categories. I honestly think for our application over here on the broadcast side, I think those numbers might be a better solution. And I'm an old guy that's used to slight, moderate and high. I came from that era, but I know that people that use our products and services, they don't come from this background. They're not as old as I am. They don't understand. When they hear slight, they think it means there's not going to be no severe weather. But I think the numbers can really help. And I think I'm going to start working more on using numbers in that scale than the terms, which I think is an important hint for those of us that disseminate this information, because I think that the social science side, they can probably say they understand those numbers better than those words. Don't you think so?
It's one of the things that we heard, and believe it or not, we actually reached out to social scientists when we tried to implement when we did implement the 2 new categories, and that was one of the recommendations that was given to us, is try to also incorporate the numbers, iconography, and things that are in the works. But the numbers, we've gone ahead and we put them in there, and so things like it's a level 2 out of 5, or it's a level 2 risk, or things like this. I'm not a communications expert. I'm trying to learn. I'm interested in learning more about it, but I'll defer in the meantime to people like Dr. Kim Coco and Gina Esco and Laura Myers and Susan Jasko and anybody else who's willing to work with us. And even you, James, I mean, you guys do communication for a living. And so we want to hear from you. We want to work with you guys. My email, my Twitter, my phone, it's always open. So the good, the bad, and the ugly, please let us know, because we're all in this together, and we want to make your life easy.
Hey, you make my life easy. And I don't know anything about communication either. My background, my first major in college was electrical engineering. I've never taken a single class on being some guy on TV. So we're all feeling our way in the dark. But let's talk about that. You talked about this immediate feedback in the new world of social media. A lot of people think that if you're on television or kind of out there, a public person, then you're the one that's going to get the hate. You guys get the trolls, the haters, and the know-it-alls too. Obviously, it's brutal over on the Facebook page. How do you deal with these people? What's your position on dealing with them? The negative Nellies, the ones that they're just drive-by haters. They hate everything you do. You know the ones I'm talking about, the chronic haters.
There are a couple that are pretty prolific at emailing us. And I actually have it set up where if you email our feedback account, I'm one of the recipients that gets it forwarded to me. So I see all the feedback emails. And honestly, I have a big chuckle at some of them. There's this one guy, I won't name who he is or where he's from.
Go ahead. We'd love to hear what his name is.
I don't want to give him the satisfaction of that.
You can mention my name. I don't care.
Well, ironically, so this guy uses the words and terminology and the cadence of his sentences are identical to one of our lead forecasters. And so the running joke is it is a lead forecaster who is emailing us to criticize our own products.
I think it's Rich Thompson.
That's exactly who we think it is.
Yes.
But at least one of your regular hosts receives feedback emails from the same individual, and so we shared notes at the recent broadcaster conference, and so it's quite fun to know that we're not actually. It's kind of, in hindsight, it's kind of sad to realize we're not that special. Everybody's getting the hater news from this guy. But honestly,
I would assume you guys don't have the staff, and I do want to talk about staffing shortages and needs, but you probably don't have, like Rick Smith. Rick, you guys are just really good at social media. I don't know how you do it, if you got extra staff or what, but during severe weather, where it seems like the demand from the SPC guys putting out real-time information across social media is maybe not as intense, seems to be more automated. Would you say that's true, Rick? It's kind of an apples and oranges thing?
It started out that way, but Patrick can certainly speak to the fact that that's changing, I think, at the SPC. I mean, I don't know if it's to the level that maybe WFOs are doing yet, but it's getting there. Patrick, I mean, you guys have made some big changes just in the past couple of years with Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah. So one of the things that we did 2014, I believe it was, is we created what we call the Enhanced Collaboration and Communication Shift. And anytime we have a moderate risk that has 3 million people in it, or a high risk at all, we activate this shift, and it can also be activated additionally for on an ad hoc basis if we think that there's going to be particular heightened media attention. And one of the things that's designed to do is it's supposed to handle some of our social media aspects of it. It's supposed to also help with national media calls, and then also, at least when I've done it recently, the weather has gotten so big. A recent example is the May 27th severe event across parts of the mid-Mississippi Valley into Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia, where we had potentially 3 derechos, depending on how you wanted, which classification system you want to use. But I mean, so the X shift can help with some of that. The biggest issue that we run into is, how do we continue to maintain a social media presence and be active on social media as an event is unfolding without stepping on the toes of the local forecast offices? The local forecast offices are the ones who have the relationships with the planners and the local communities. And we don't want to be giving conflicting information to what they are giving in their messaging and what they've discussed in their IWTs. So we try to avoid getting down into the individual storm details when it comes to social media. So a lot of our stuff is pre-initiation or pre-onset of the significant severe, when the attention and the focus might not be as high as when you have tornadoes on the ground moving into a metro area. So that's one of the challenges that we wrestle with, is how to utilize social media in a manner that doesn't interfere with the communications from the local forecast offices. So one of the things that we have done is I've at least tried to start providing statistical information about some of our products. Recently, we issued the first PDS, particularly dangerous situation watch in Wyoming history earlier this year. It was a PDS tornado watch in far eastern Wyoming, and so we tried to get that information out. And it's mainly to broadcasters to arm them with information and talking points should they need to do break-ins and things like that. At least that's how I've evolved. But this year, I mean, as we alluded to, our staffing is pretty minimal for what we do. We have rotating shifts. We don't tend to call in people like forecast offices can do. There are a lot of reasons behind why that is. personally, for me, some of it's pride. This is what we do. We should be able to handle it. But we also know that if it gets out of hand, we do call in, and sometimes we'll make plans at the days ahead of time saying, we need people, hey, we're going to have someone come in early to cover this because it's going to be really busy, widespread. But we don't have a dedicated social media person. And we're trying not to step on the toes of the field offices when it gets into the warning aspect.
So let's talk about the relationship with the field offices. And I've talked about this earlier. It's no secret. We got to a point for a while where the local offices were putting out these impact outlooks that differed from your convective outlooks. And it seems as though there's a little better coordination now, at least where I am. We don't have that problem now. Talk about the relationship with these Weather Service field offices around the country in the effort to stay consistent in messaging.
Well, one of the things that I like to say, and this is one of the potential things that I'm going to just say that could get me in the hot water down the road.
Oh, good. We like that.
For me personally, consistency does not mean the exact same. I believe that we can have consistency in message and consistency in forecast with there being slight differences. I also believe that I'm going to state up front unequivocally. I don't think that when you see disagreements with the Storm Prediction Center, and because I work there, I'm going to focus on that. I don't think that it's out of malicious intent. I don't think people are doing it to try to spite anyone. I genuinely believe that people are trying to put forth the best possible forecast. That includes the field offices and that includes us. It just, we look at the same information or maybe slightly different information and we come to different interpretations on it. It's a forecast. If it weren't a forecast and it were a fact, then yeah, we'd all be on the same. I think it was Craig Fugate recently said that in a talk. He basically mentioned that there's uncertainty in the information. It's a forecast. Otherwise, we'd all call them facts. So I think that everybody is genuinely trying to put the best forecast out, and what best forecast means to an individual might be different. Alan Murphy wrote a very good paper. Basically, it's on the goodness of forecasts, or the goodness. I forget the exact title, but there are different measures of goodness of a forecast. And I would say in our current paradigm, there's probably even more definitions of what constitutes a quote unquote good forecast. So I think everybody's trying to put together good forecasts. But as you mentioned, the culture at SPC and also the culture in the field, we had different relationships when all of this, when the Storm Prediction Center and the field structure was developed. There was a different relationship between the two then than there is now, and there are growing pains along the way. We do actively try to reach out and work with the field. I believe over the last year we've had well over 750 distinct interactions with the field. Most of those in coordinating how convective outlooks will eventually evolve, and basically giving our thoughts, soliciting input, field offices giving input. And I think as more and more people become comfortable with that approach, some of these consistency issues may tend to wane. But then some of the things that I've seen people, and I'm not going to call out any individuals because I can't think of specific examples, but some of these things where there are apparent contradictions are actually contradictions that were coordinated between the Storm Prediction Center and the field behind the scenes. A perfect example is when the Storm Prediction Center draws their outlooks, we tend to be thinking on a national scale. We try to encourage forecasters to at least be cognizant of major metropolitan areas and other geopolitical boundaries. But when you're looking at the fire hose of data and you're in the heat of battle, that may not always be the first and foremost. You're more worried about putting out your best forecast. And so that may mean when you're working on a national scale, you draw the line for the moderate risk right down the I-35 corridor, which means Oklahoma City metropolitan area is now split in two. Well, if we do that, one of the things that the Norman office will do is they'll send us a chat or give us a call or walk next door and say, hey, we're thinking about either putting all of the metro in our graphics for the moderate or all the metro out for our graphics of the moderate. Just wanted to make sure that you guys are okay with that. You guys know that we're going to do that. This is why. We're totally fine with that. We understand. I mean, our forecasts are slightly different. We're looking at the big picture, and they're looking at the very specific local impacts. That's an example where I think that people could say that there's big inconsistency. And in fact, I used to be one of those people who say, how dare they do that? But as you start to see how the sausage is made and you see the process, you realize that some of these little inconsistencies to the graphics may actually help make a better consistent message to the public. That's a long-winded answer, and I'm trying to run out the clock.
Yeah, but I honestly think you're missing the point that James is bringing up, though. He's not talking about splitting Oklahoma City or the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex or Jefferson and Shelby County in central Alabama. He's talking about where you guys say there's a risk of severe storms, and the forecast office says, no, there isn't, or the opposite, which is a lot more brutal than just simply splitting a Metroplex area.
I understand, and we tried to work through those issues. I disagree when there are differing of opinions, but ultimately we each have our own forecasts, and we certainly do not have the authority or the desire to want to get on the phone and say, you will do this.
I understand that. I think from our point of view, and remember, I'm a former WCM, but now on the dark side. The problem is we get people that look at the Birmingham office website, and then they look at your website and say, hey, they don't agree. And they ask us. And you know, that becomes a serious message consistency problem.
I can certainly agree and sympathize with that.
I think it's gotten a whole lot better, though. I really do. I don't know if it's just the coordination with SPC. You know, if SPC is making a stronger attempt at coordination. I know when I retired, which is many years back now, we were really having really good coordination with SPC about where boxes were going to be and all that sort of stuff. But we weren't issuing our own graphics and outlooks that differed from SPC. I mean, we were pretty much sticking together.
Patrick, how much coordination is there before you issue a day one, the one that comes out at midnight, 1 a.m. local time, whatever? If you're going to have just a slight risk or a marginal risk, I assume maybe you don't call. But if you have a moderate high, when do you call the local field office and kind of talk with them and get their input about that, or do you do that at all?
We do that sometimes. There's no hard and fast rule. It is strongly encouraged, and it actually goes both ways. It's not SBC calling out, but it's also field offices calling in saying, "Hey, we're thinking about this. What do you guys think?" The key is from our point of view is we want all of the decisions to be based in science. I mean, our communications plans, our forecast, everything we do, we want to be based in science. And so if you're a field office and you're thinking, I think that there's a moderate risk in here. If you call the Storm Prediction Center, we're going to listen, but we want you to give us the meteorological reasoning behind. We don't necessarily want to say, well, it's going to make our life easier if you do this. Well, that's good information, but we want to put forth a scientifically accurate forecast. So we want all of our decisions to be based in the meteorology. And as the weather, I think a lot of the challenges that the Weather Service is seeing is we're making in Weather Service time domain, we're making a radically fast change to becoming a decision support services organization. And I think that we're still learning what that means. And so when the field offices are wanting to work with their partners and get the assessment out and say, there may be a severe risk in the extended range, or there may be a severe risk today, or whatnot. There's this tug and pull of how do we best serve that customer and how do we stay consistent with the Storm Prediction Center. I'm not going to lie, I don't even want to know. I don't have any idea the amount of pressure and influence and questioning that people like Rick or Kevin Laws in Birmingham or in the Nashville offices or the office, the Jackson office, for example, the Jackson, Mississippi office. I know just based on some emails that I've seen that they are under enormous pressure from their constituents and their partners, and they have enormous demands and questions. And that a lot depends on what the outlook is. We recognize that, and we understand the need to try to reach out and try to provide information to them. But at the same time, we're trying to be consistent to the forecast, and we can say, well, there certainly is a risk of severe storms. You're not out of the woods, but we don't necessarily know if it's going to be in your area. How do we communicate that? The field wants to really work with their partners, and so you may see them jump on the gun and say there's going to be severe storms on day 7, whereas we're a little bit gun shy to jump on it because we see the whole country. We've been burned many times on some of the specifics. We've gotten some of the specifics right, so we tend to be a little bit cautious on something like that. So how then does the Weather Service communicate the scientific forecast and be responsive to the emergency managers and help them with their messaging? And I think what we saw a lot earlier this year was this tug and pull of how the Weather Service is going to rectify this. It's really the first real big year where we've done this. I think we've made tremendous strides in trying to work through these issues as both the National Center and the field. Are we perfect? No. Will we ever be perfect? Probably not.
Yeah.
But I think that the issues that you guys were seeing earlier this year, I think will begin to wane as we become more comfortable with understanding how to do the science and the decision supports in the best possible way. And I don't mean to imply that there's no science going into decision support. Just want to be clear before the emails and tweets start coming.
I understand. So let's talk about staffing. How understaffed are you, Patrick?
We have 22. We have 34 federal meteorologists and support staff at the Storm Prediction Center, 22 of which are dedicated forecasters. We currently have 3 forecast vacancies, with a 4th on the way with someone who just accepted a position in the field. We have, on our science support side, we are down 2 people, and the science support side, the science support meteorologists or technique development meteorologists, which is what I was before the WCM. They also fill in on the forecast on the forecast side as well. So you can think of, we're down additional forecasters beside the dedicated forecast staff. And then we're also down an our administrative officer, the one who knows all the rules and how to handle the budgets and things like that. We're down that person. And as you can imagine, unequivocally, you had no idea how underappreciated that person is until that person is gone. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how we stayed afloat.
Well, Patrick, on a typical operational day,
yeah.
and I don't mean, all hands on deck, we got horrible weather coming. Just a typical day. How many forecasters are on duty around the clock?
So on the day shift, we have 5 forecasters. We have the lead forecaster, the mesoscale forecaster, the mesoscale assistant forecaster, and the outlook forecaster. Those are the primary 4 on the severe side, and we also staff a fire weather shift during the day.
Right.
During the
and let me point out that fire weather shift is nationwide too. It's not.
Yes, it is a nationwide.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of a convective outlook, but for fire.
For fire, yes. Okay.
Okay. We also, on the evening shift, we would then have 4. We have 4 people on the evening shift. The 4 that I mentioned for the severe.
Okay.
Then sometime around between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock, we have a new forecaster come in, and the new forecaster is the one who does the extended range. So you can think of it as the overnight outlook forecaster. On the midnight shift, we don't have a dedicated outlook forecaster that comes in at midnight because that person came in between 8 and 10.
Between 8 and 10, okay. Little bit of overlap with the other shift then too, though. That's always good.
Correct. Yes. Can be some discussion. The person doing the day 1 can then talk to the person who did the day 2, because the extended person does day 2, 3, and then 4 through 8. So gotcha. If I'm working on the day 1, initial day 1 that goes out at midnight or 1 a.m., I have the ability to talk to probably the person who issued the day 2 the day before, and I can bounce and say, so why did you think about this, or why did you do that, or what kind of, well, if I do this, what am I missing? So there's some give and take there. So having that staggered is actually pretty nice.
Well, and I think, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Okay, and then on the mid shift, traditionally we've had 3 people, the lead forecaster, the mesoscale, and the mesoscale assistant. And the mesoscale assistant also did fire weather, the initial day 1 and day 2 fire weather on a midnight shift. However, because of our 24/7 staffing, rotating shifts, being down effectively 3 mesoscale assistant forecasters, we were unable to maintain the midnight shift. So what we did is we modified the schedule so that the evening shift actually works a 10-hour shift and works from 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. And so from 3 a.m. to 8 a.m., we tend to have either 2 or 3 people on shift, depending on when the outlook forecaster came in.
Yeah.
So we've had to play with our schedule some to keep to work within our staffing situation.
Right.
The good news is we have new people starting in August. We were able to fill our technique development meteorologist positions earlier this year, so those 2 vacancies will go away the beginning of August. And the mesoscale outlook position closed earlier this summer, so hopefully we'll get those positions filled soon.
I appreciate that, because I think a lot of people might think, well, being down three positions is not a big hardship, but when you consider operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it does become, and your outline really showed that. Thank you.
We also, in addition to having the dedicated vacancies, we had 2 extended sick leave. Someone had a complicated pregnancy and needed to, and actually gave birth 12 weeks early. And so she is out dealing with complications and that. Good news, the baby appears to be doing fine. And then we also had someone who was going through cancer treatments, and so has been out for extended periods of time as well. So
Yikes.
On paper, we're only down 6, but effectively we were down closer to 8.
Yeah.
So all right. So let me ask you this, Patrick.
8 out of 34 is about 25%. So
yeah.
So Patrick, grade the SPC on your performance this year. A, B, C, D, E, or F. Pick one.
Pick one. Can I say for E?
No,
you can't use E.
No. E for excellent.
I'm going to bust out a phrase that we often use, and that is, every forecast is wrong. Some forecasts are useful. And so if you grade on that, with that in mind, I would say that we actually did pretty well this year. There are, maybe on our communication side, we have some work to do on communicating what our forecasts actually mean. But in general, statistically speaking, which again, going back to the science-based forecast, we've actually done fairly well. We have work to do on how to best communicate this. I know that there was a lot of pushback regarding some of the high risks that the Storm Prediction Center has issued this year. And I maybe wrongly assume that that's your polite way of reaching toward that question. But I think it's a fundamental question of what are we trying to do? If you think that a high risk can be achieved with 30% coverage of tornadoes, that doesn't take a lot of tornadoes if you draw small areas. And so how do we best communicate situations where historically high risk were used for these big, large areas that had lots of tornadoes, and you were going to see lots of damage on the evening news. But as we move towards facets, and I alluded to this as we move to short-term outlooks, if you can start to identify smaller corridors of increased tornado potential, such that probabilistically speaking, you're going to have 30 or 45% coverage, it doesn't necessarily take a lot of tornadoes to get 45% coverage in these smaller areas, which means you may not have big towns hit. So how then do you communicate that a high risk is actually a probabilistic forecast? Should we communicate it in that way, or should we find a way to limit high risks for an impact-based forecast? Not that I'm not saying that we know how to do that at this point. So from a forecast point of view, I think SPC has done fairly well. We have work to do on the communication side, and that starts with me. And I give myself a C or a D. But I'm going to say go easy on me because I'm still trying to learn my job.
And some big shoes to fill too.
Yes.
So tell me about the hardest thing you've had to do as the WCM at SPC. Now, I've seen Rick on national TV. You know, presidents come in. Rick's kind of a big deal. I mean, you know, national media star. Have you dabbled in any of that since you have been in this position, having to do the national television interviews and all this kind of stuff?
I've done national interviews. I've done, actually prior to being the WCM, I kind of helped Greg with some of the interviews. And in fact, on the May 20th, 2013 tornado that went through Moore, Greg Carbon was actually out of town. And so Harold Brooks and I were kind of filling in, and I actually was doing interviews with the BBC in London and media in Australia. So I have dabbled in that. I can tell you that it's always fun when the BBC calls you at 1 a.m. on your cell phone asking for an interview because they forget the time change or they don't care, one of the two.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
That was kind of like I had gone to bed at like 11. This was the night of the Moore tornado. I had gone to bed at like 11 or midnight. I had to be back in the office by 6 to help get ready to go out to do storm surveys. And the BBC is calling me at like 1 a.m. and I'm in a fog. I'm like, I have no new information. I'm trying to sleep. What? So baptism by fire. But I would say probably the biggest challenge is learning to be myself and not be Greg Carbon 2.0. And if you think about it, that's actually it sounds easy, but I keep finding myself falling into the trap of, well, Greg always did this. I need to do that. And you're like, take a step back and like, well, you know, that's not exactly where all my strongest strength is. There are other people at the Storm Prediction Center who would be better at it than I am. How do I get them involved? And how do I focus my unique skill set to best serve the Storm Prediction Center and my role? And that's something that I'm still learning and struggling to do. Probably not what you were thinking, but I try to be out. Try to be
good
out
answer.
I think it's a good answer. It really is.
So let's take a quick break. Patrick, have you got 10 more minutes or do you have to go?
I'm good for as long as these guys want me. I put the baby to bed.
Oh,
I put
good.
Tornado Talk to bed earlier.
Good. Now, Rick, I think you.
It's good to go.
Yeah, Rick, I think you've got to run. You said you might have to leave a little early. Are you okay for a while, or what's your status?
I'm probably going to bail here in a few minutes. So I want to hear Brian's. I want to hear Professor Peters, though. I hear it's a really good one this week.
Only because he inspired it. That's why he wants to hear it.
Wow. But Rick, since you got to leave, I was going to say, do you want to do your pick of the week a little early here?
Yeah, I'll just real quick. Patrick was talking about identifying corridors of enhanced tornado potential, and we, based on Storm Prediction Center outlooks and guidance and based on some experimental models, we had an experience on May 16th this year where we're able to not predict the path of the tornado. When you click on this link, it's going to say we predicted the path of the tornado. Kind of a bad headline. We didn't predict the path, but we identified an area with enhanced tornado potential. So this is my pick of the week is a story, a NOAA story that explains that and how operational WFO forecasters, having worked with the SPC, also worked with some people from the Severe Storms Lab and people in the building, researchers, to get that out there. So I think it's kind of a cool story. Just skip past the headline.
Okay, awesome. And again, this will be up on the website, weatherbrains.com. So, Rick, you bail when you have to. But, hey, if you're listening, we got a lot more to go here. We've got Brian Peters, WeatherBrains 101. We've got Tony Rice in the Astronomy Report. We'll come back with the Weather Roundup, picks of the week, and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
This segment of WeatherBrains 101 was inadvertently suggested by our very own Rick Smith, who posted a tweet about lightning, lighting, and lightning. Sometimes the 101 segment is just educational, and sometimes it incorporates education and a rant, such as this. If I could nominate a word in the field of meteorology for king of the most misspelled category, my nomination would be lightning. I, along with most meteorologists, just absolutely cringe when we see the word used and misspelled. Lightning, the occurrence of a natural electrical discharge of very short duration and high voltage between a cloud and the ground or within a cloud, accompanied by a bright flash and thunder, is the word we're typically trying to use. It's spelled Lightning, but it can often be misspelled incorrectly, I might add, as Lightning, note no N, or Lightning, note the addition of an E. Neither of these has any relationship to the one that produces thunder. Lighting is the equipment we use at various locations to produce more light. It is not accompanied by thunder, but a lighting tower will definitely make a loud crash if it falls to the ground. Lightning refers to making something lighter, as in to weigh less. It's also used in the medical profession for a drop in the level of the uterus during the last weeks of pregnancy. No, this is not medical brains, but I can't help but wonder if physicians cringe over the misspelling of this term in their profession. One more note, spelling the word correctly depends solely on you, because all three words will legitimately pass all spell checking programs. So we say it often, lightning deserves your respect. Please give it the respect it needs by spelling the word correctly. Lightning. If you have a question about the weather, drop a note to question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
The size an object appears in the sky is measured in arc seconds. The sun measures about 32 arc seconds, but so does the moon. This is what astronomers call a celestial coincidence. That's what makes total eclipses possible. The sun is about 400 times larger than the moon, but it's also about 400 times further away from us here on Earth. And that's pretty special. It's also fleeting. The moon's orbit is growing larger, moving away from the Earth at a rate of about 3.8 centimeters each year. So, in about 500 million years, total eclipses will no longer be possible. Only annular ones, where the sun is still visible around the edges of the moon. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around because these scales are so large. To get an appreciation, you can try an exercise that was created by Guy Ottewell of the Royal Astronomical Society. And you probably have everything you need in the kitchen for this exercise. Starting with the sun. Anything about 8 inches in diameter. A dinner plate works pretty well here. While you're in the kitchen, grab a peppercorn, that's your Earth, and a poppy seed. That'll represent your moon. Now you're going to have to go outside for this experiment. You just don't have enough room in your kitchen. Set the sun down and start walking. 10 paces away, that's where Mercury goes. Another 9 paces comes Venus's orbit. Finally, 7 paces from there, you can set your peppercorn down. That's where Earth goes, a full 26 yards away from that dinner plate sun. At this scale, the moon goes 2.4 inches from Earth. That's about the length of your thumb. And when you set them down, line them all up in a row, because that's how they'll be aligned on August 21st during the total solar eclipse. Which might leave you wondering, how can that little poppy seed cover up that big dinner plate? Our 400 times smaller moon is coincidentally 400 times further than the sun. For the full exercise and all the planets and their sizes and location, Google 1,000-yard model. At this scale, our solar system would end with a peanut-sized Neptune another 750 yards out. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
Okay, we are doing this show on July the 17th, 2017. We're in the dog days here of summer. Brian, you're my dog day expert guy.
No, not yet. Those are usually
when do the dog days start?
I think usually August, late July, August. It's definitely hot in the Southwest and much of the Western U.S. That's for sure.
Yeah, close enough. So, yeah, where we are down here in the deep south, we have had convection that's been pretty rigorous and regular and soaking. You've been pretty wet out there, Brian, where you are, right?
I have. And interesting today, James, that outflow boundary that came out of those storms in eastern Jefferson County was absolutely phenomenal. At my house, when the outflow boundary came through, it dropped my temperature 3 degrees. Then a thunderstorm developed on that outflow boundary and dropped my temperature another 12 degrees. So
wow.
That was nice.
Awesome. Kevin, you're muted, sir.
Being a wise guy, and I said, and then he had a heat burst and the temperature rose.
No, it hasn't gone up very much at all.
I went to the internet. Wikipedia says dog days of summer are the hot, sultry days of summer. They were historically the period following the heliacal rising of the star Sirius.
The dog star.
Which gets us no closer to the actual answer of whether or not we're.
I'm about to say we still don't have any idea. That's great.
And we have a tropical storm.
Yeah, we have a tropical storm by the name of Don. Which
did that
probably
come up this afternoon? I didn't even look.
Yeah, I don't think Don's going to last long. Very low latitude and kind of skirt the coast of South America, and probably will dissipate by Wednesday night if the NHC guys are right, and I think they are. So,
yep.
And a big earthquake. Did you guys see this this evening? Yep. This is 7.8. That's a whopper.
Which turns out was actually measured in Heflin, Alabama.
Yeah. Our guy measured it here, and this was off the coast of Russia, near the kind of the tip of the Aleutian Islands. And the tsunami folks kind of had everybody on hold, but right now they have no concern for California or Oregon or Washington State. But that's a whopper of an earthquake that happened during the show here. But Kevin, what's happening weather-wise in Wichita Falls, Texas?
Well, since I can't let this dog days of summer thing go, I further read, and the rising of Sirius during this period has been calculated as July 19th.
So, like in 2 days.
2 days.
2 days. So,
okay.
I guess technically, officially, we're not there yet, but we're pretty darn close. And I think, didn't we learn at some point that most people listen by Thursday and Friday as opposed to earlier in the week?
within 5 days? Yes.
Yeah.
But it's loaded toward the back end. Did we learn that, or am I making that up?
You are correct, sir.
Okay, well, that's interesting. To answer your question, we're just kind of hot and humid. The temperature has been close to average, so the news people get all freaked out and do heat tips and things, which I know is James's favorite thing. And
go into an air-conditioned room, drink some water, avoid the sun during the hardest part of the day. Well, do you think so? Yeah, I wouldn't know that if I didn't watch the news.
Our average is 97 for this date. We hit 95 today. I had forecast 96, so we were 2 degrees below average, but I was in the A block of both the early newscasts. So I know that's James's favorite thing.
Yeah, he's probably the top of the news tonight.
I'm leading the news, I'm sure, here at the top of the hour for something. We'll figure out what it is. But what's funny now, every time it gets hot, it's an emergency. When I was growing up, it was called summer.
Yeah.
I mean, I just
and the dog days
of
summer.
Yeah, the dog days of summer. So anyway, Patrick, what's happening in Norman? Oh, you're not in Norman tonight, are you? You're somewhere east of there in an undisclosed location.
I actually live in Shawnee, Oklahoma, so I live about 40 miles east of Norman.
You drive that every day?
I drive that twice a day.
Wow.
Wow.
My wife is a faculty member at a small Christian liberal arts school here in Shawnee, and so she did the drive for 2 years, and then I'm now working on year number 4.
Very good.
What a gentleman.
Yes, very nice.
Happy wife, happy life, right?
Yeah, bing. You got that right.
There's a show title for you.
Yeah. Gosh, these Twitter spammers are really getting on my nerves tonight. So somebody created a fake James Spann, and that happens about once every month. And they're pretty good. I think Twitter shut it down already. But now we've got this picture of this woman, and every account's got a different name. It's the same picture, and it comes on with this spam link, and it tweets it out to me. And I have probably blocked accounts with this woman's picture at least 100 times today. 100 times today. and it's just eating. It's making Twitter unusable tonight for me, which is just. And then you get all the. There's a lot of things going on here. So, Kevin, I got a social media problem.
Yeah, you're coming to the wrong guy. Does Twitter have a team of people out monitoring for fake James Spann accounts so they can hop on this? Is that what's happening?
Well, I know that Marshall Shepard had and then again, these happen on a regular basis. They do it on Facebook. They clone the accounts, and it's just the world we live in. And but Twitter, in fact, they were on it before I reported it.
So they do have a team of people doing James Spann monitoring.
I guess. I mean, I checked on the fake one tonight, and it said, and of course, it's James Spann with like 3 underscores, and there's no verification check. But it's the same picture, the exact same, wording. I mean, everything looks the same except for the little blue check. And then the guy sent me a direct message, something about.
You're kidding. They're monitoring their biggest accounts. See, they're monitoring them. You see, you've got like 3 billion followers now, and so they have some algorithm that's checking to make sure they don't make James Spann mad. Because
then some account called the Weather Police came on and said, "Why did you block my friend?" Which means it's the same guy. He just trolls weather people. He's probably done it to Patrick. He's probably done it to Kevin, and probably done it to Brian. They have no life. You talk about having. I think we have a little bit of a life here.
This
we do.
An interesting question though. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Patrick.
I was just saying, I never made it. Nobody is out there trying to spam me. I once asked Twitter to verify me, and they said, "No, you're not important enough." So I'm just going to keep riding just below the surface.
You're the stinking WCM at the Storm Prediction Center. What do you mean, man? You are the ultimate big deal here.
This guy can bring down hellfire and damnation on the entire country, and he's not important enough for Twitter.
So they wanted something like a link to an article to prove your identity, and I was like, well, I'm quoted in this Washington Post article, and that apparently didn't matter.
Get James Spann to come to you, because they've got a team of James Spann monitorers. If James verifies you, that should be enough.
I don't know if I want all these spam bots.
Some of this stuff you don't want to go down this path. Your head would explode.
Can you guys imagine this though? Because I was actually talking about this with a few people earlier today. When Greg was on a couple of weeks ago, and he's talking about these 90-minute tornado warning things that they've been modeling. But can you begin to imagine what's going to happen on social media when that data becomes public, and the panic that will spread in any one spot on a 90-minute tornado advisory?
I try really hard not to think about that because I like sleeping at night.
James?
That's a show for another week. But we got to roll on here because I've got to go do some television here. Picks of the week. Let's start with Brian Peters, the internationally beloved meteorologist.
Okay, I'm not picking this one because of its importance, because it's really a terrible tragedy, but it underscores how fast flash flooding can occur. It's the details of the deaths of 9 people in Arizona who were spending a very warm afternoon relaxing at a swimming hole. The rain occurred 8 miles away. They didn't even have rain at their location, and 9 of the 14 people died in the tremendous flash flood. And it just underscores how rapidly that can occur. So.
Yep, very sad. All right, so Kevin, what you got for us this week?
I guess I don't have one officially. If you want to go to digital meteorologist, my latest post is particularly grumpy, but there are some good links in it that are worth reading.
All right, there you go. All right, Patrick, don't tell me. And by the way, the WCM page is one of the greatest weather sites in the world. And I guess Greg started that, but you didn't you work on that when Greg was there, or have something to do with it?
I gave him some stuff to put in there. It's kind of like the outreach page for the Storm Prediction Center. So I create stuff.
I mean, you're like gave him all the code, didn't you? I mean, you're the brains behind that thing.
I taught Greg, or I encouraged him to learn Python, which then opened up a whole new world to him.
Wow.
So. And again, it kind of explained that page for those that have not been there.
So the Warning Coordination Meteorologist page is kind of like an outreach media blog. Anytime we do something that we think is interesting, or we want to get it out there, we tend to put it on the WCM page. It's some organizations within the government or the Weather Service adhere to this rule more than others, but I was always told that in order for the Storm Prediction Center to post something on social media, it has to also be referenced somewhere on our official webpage, because we can't have preferences on various individual platforms. So like, if we post our convective outlook, since it's available on our webpage, that's fine. But if we wanted to create a special infographic or something, we'd also need to have it on our webpage so that people who just go to our webpage can also access it. So you don't have to be on social media. And so a lot of these things got put on the WCM page, but not everybody knows what the WCM page means. So it's kind of a poorly named page that is more of an outreach page that the WCM tends to maintain and run.
Awesome. All right, Patrick. So here you go. What's your pick of the week? Lay it on us.
I'm gonna pick the USA job listing for the National Hurricane Center director.
Wow.
So if you want to come work with the National Centers for Environmental Prediction within the National Weather Service, get your application in.
There you go. Hey, Patrick, do you know this?
Good salary for that position. I was going to say that guy, that position makes pretty good money there. I like it.
Do you
gonna fly?
Do you know, Patrick,
No.
this the Helicity Designs T-shirts? Do you know these?
I know about them, and I jokingly said that it's kind of nice to be able to get my own discount.
You do get a discount?
Well, no, they have this, like, depending on the Outlook category, you can get a different discount. So it's like, oh, I need to get a new pair of socks. I'm just kidding. We don't actually do that. But
I asked the guy what his number one seller was. This was a couple weeks back, but it's the risk category one.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
You should be getting a percentage out there.
Yes,
Patrick.
That's right.
Well, I should also maybe I should have changed my pick of the week to the link to the Sharpie webpage, since I was one of the creators of that as well.
Boy, that's a great site. Wow.
What's that?
Awesome.
What's that?
Sharpie.
There's the Sharpie, the sounding analysis program. It's modeled after what we have internal.
Got it.
There's been some debate about whether or not we should have included the part that had the possible hazard types. But as for all the complaints that people have, I actually kind of think they're fun. I enjoy the social media banter and uproar over it. You got to learn to laugh.
All right. Well, I've got about 27 more questions for Patrick, but we got to go. Kevin, I got 2 minutes. Anything else from you?
I'm good.
All right. Out of all the staff members, who's the biggest clown at the SPC? Who's the funniest person that works out there? There's always the knucklehead, a bonehead in every group. Like here, I'm the guy. Who's the knucklehead out there?
I wouldn't say there's actually just one. We're all just, I shouldn't say all, but a large number of us are a bunch of pranksters and jokesters.
That's
Ryan
funny.
Jewell, Jared Geyer, Rich Thompson, myself, Jarrett Rogers, who just recently left, Ariel Cohen. I mean, all of us pull pranks on one another. If you spend this much time around people, you're either going to hate them or you're going to learn to act like a family. And of course, within any family, you're going to be pulling pranks on one another.
That's funny. When you think of SPC, you don't think of a bunch of guys, full of hijinks and
Hey,
here. Pull
when you're
my
wrong as
finger.
many times as we are, you got to learn to laugh.
Yeah, no, if you can't laugh, you got no hope in this business. It will eat you alive. You've sometimes got to laugh. So, hey, listen, WeatherBrains is on every week. We're typically here Monday nights, 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central. Most people listen, but some watch. You could watch us live.bigbrainsmedia.com. Our email address, Aubrey, by the way, not here tonight. She'll be back next week. We'll do a long email segment. It's email@weatherbrains.com. Our social media accounts are there. All the show notes, the websites, the picks of the week, it's all there. So on behalf of the entire weather...
And
Yes?
James,
Yes?
we've been on the air for 11.538461 years.
Only on this show do you get that information. Wow. I feel old. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend. God bless.
I have a new show title.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Pull my SPC.
Thank you, Patrick. Enjoyed it.
Patrick, you were great, man. Thanks for hanging in with us for so long. I appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much.
You better watch it. I think you may become a regular visitor.
All right.
No, Patrick's good.
as long as we get as long as I get my daughter to bed, and as she's getting older, that's getting easier. I got no problem being on. If you guys want to talk about aftermaths of severe or before severe or whatever, even if it's just for 5 minutes here or there, if I can be of help.
Do you also have a dog?
No dog.
No dog, just a daughter. Okay.
Just a daughter, just tornado time. I can barely keep up.
I gotta
with
go.
her.
Thanks,